Trump is 100% good or is 100% bad. Now, as I said, I'm ordinarily Republican, so there's actually some things that Trump has done that I approve of. I think on the whole he's a scoundrel, but, there's a kind of a nuanced judgment there.
I won't give you the whole story, but basically it was an international coalition of people. There was a Russian guy there. The Russian guy made some reference to how he sees some juice as blue and other people see the juice as orange, like it's orange juice, but he's like, I see it as, like, to me, this is blue. The moral of the story was finding cooperation and working together in a time where truth isn't one thing. There are many truths to our reality. And I guess I'm curious if you have any thoughts for this trend of growing new truths or alternative truths and the way that we can remain oriented. I know you touched earlier on maintaining multiple sources, but multiple sources I feel like works when you agree on some level of truths. So I'm curious if there are any differences when certain truths are not agreed upon. For example, some people say their vaccine science is unverified. Just an example.
Part of this, I think, is our own personal attitudes toward it. And as I said, one of the things the internet produces, and it's something that humans have always wanted, is absolute certainty. No blacks and whites, basic principle of propaganda. And we all have a tendency to do that. Trump is 100% good or is 100% bad. Now, as I said, I'm ordinarily Republican, so there's actually some things that Trump has done that I approve of. I think on the whole he's a scoundrel, but, there's a kind of a nuanced judgment there. One of my favorite quotations, and I don't think it applies to our dealings in these kinds of situations, is from the Polish dissident, a guy named, I cannot pronounce the name quite perfectly, but Czesław Miłosz, who wrote a book years back called The Captive Mind, which was a study of, kind of Marxism, Leninism in Poland and why people believed it. He's got a fascinating quotation, and let me just read that a minute. He quotes, quote, an old Jew of Galicia. And the guy says, when someone is honestly 55% right, that's very good and there's no use wrangling. And if someone is 60% right, it's wonderful, it's great luck, and let him thank God. But what's to be said about 75% right? Wise people say this is suspicious. Well, and what about 100% right? Whoever says he's 100% right is a fanatic, a thug, and the worst kind of scoundrel. Now, he's not talking about arguing about the date on the calendar. He's talking about things that human beings can reasonably disagree on. And I think one of the best things we can do, and I said this earlier, is to try to understand why someone could hold the opinions we find abhorrent. Now, we can either assume that they're a stupid, ignorant, absolutely awful person and we should have nothing to do with them. This results in a very nice degree of polarization. I stick with my kind, he sticks with his evil kind, okay? Or we can enter into these discussions with the approach of that old Jew from Galicia. There are a lot of things in life that I'm 55 or 60 or 65% sure of, but I can understand why people might disagree. And I think that's one of the things that is simply more necessary, to actually spend the time to listen, to discuss, not with, boy, are you an idiot, but, well, what about this? Or how would you deal with that? Now, again, that's the kind of thing that we sit around a table over a glass of beer or a glass of wine and do. We can't do it over the internet. You cannot have that conversation, I wouldn't say absolutely never, but about 0.5% of the time can you have that conversation electronically. And so basic human contact and discussing these issues is, I think, pretty important.